wondering who. Dan, did you have somebody set up to do this for tonight? Or?
I would prefer that Ms. Hogarth, who I believe is in, although she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to make it.
I am here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to give us an initial
Yes.
credentials report of how many delegates and alternates are
Present here?
I guess, or present? Yeah, if you have that.
I have the registered numbers too, but anyway, yeah, I do have the present. Although the fact that the chairs are panelists is going to make me have to do some computation. But I see that there are 401. Yeah.
I think you just subtract out Mr. Harris and Mr. Fishman. So you just -2 from the total between attendees and panelists.
Right. So then I have to add the attendees, 451, and panelists, 38 minus 2.
So that's 486.
Thank you.
So there's 486 people in here. Is there a motion? Well, on behalf of the Credentials Committee, do you move us accept that 486 people to be credentialed, Ms. Hogan?
For tonight, yes, I do so move.
Is there any objection to accepting that report?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Blitz.
I'm counting 487. Did you say there was 451 in attendance and 36?
I think, yeah, what happened was one dropped.
Oh, so it's 450 attendees and 36 panelists?
Well, yeah, now it's changing again, but we'll pick whatever number.
Okay.
People are coming and going, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
And that happens. And that's, you know, to the extent that we have an online meeting like this, the credentials report is somewhat fluid because the people are able to register, they're pre-credentialed. And that's just a matter of making sure that the right number of delegates and alternates are able to vote. So if there's no objection, we will adopt that credentials report.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Ahmad.
Chair of the Maryland delegation. I don't object to the credentials report. However, the discussion afterwards was somewhat confusing. The Credentials Committee has to give a specific and fixed number of registered delegates. The number of delegates in the room may drop from that, but if it drops enough, there won't be a quorum.
I think that's correct. We are going to have to, when we adopt in the electronic meeting, essentially take a snapshot at a particular period of time, and then periodically do credentials report updates. It's a room where people come in and out, and the report is where we're at a particular time.
Well, the Credentials Committee will have to keep track of how many different people have been in the room, because once you've been in the room and allowed to participate, then you're credentialed. And if you drop out, then you drop out, but you're still a registered delegate.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we have 2 objections to adoption of the report.
So there's objections to the adoption of the report. So we will move to a vote on the credentials report, or I believe that's correct.
Well, I'm willing to drop my objection now that it's been answered.
Mr. Chair, we also have a parliamentary point. I'm not sure if it's privileged since I'm not a parliamentarian, but from Arizona delegate Michael Kielski. I'd like to try.
Yeah, so Michael Kielski recommends taking a screenshot of the count at the moment that we do the credentials report. That may be something that can be shared.
There is also now a point of order from California.
Okay, what's the point of order? If there's objection, there's supposed to be debate. That is correct. So we will move to debate on the credentials report. If you have your hands up and are seeking to be recognized, I'm going to go to Pennsylvania Delegate Steve Sheets. Mr. Sheets, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Mr.
Can you
Sheets,
hear me?
I can now, yes.
Outstanding. As far as these things go, we don't do this in person. We don't have instantaneous, how should we say, credentialing reports when we're in person. Everybody's in the room, and if people wander out, people wander out. But we only do quorum counts if we feel that enough people have left the room that it's important. So maybe we should do quorum counts every so often and not say instantaneously. Just something to think about.
Are you moving the adoption of the report or?
Yes, I would move to adopt the report. Yes.
Okay. I see other people recognized, so with there being further debate, unless I get a motion to end the debate, we will move to the next person, South Carolina Delegate Sean Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry to delay. We're having a couple of issues here, and I wanted to make sure that we're not alone. We had a couple of people who they got the link and they've clicked on it, but they're getting rejected. I think maybe we figured out that is because they don't have a Zoom account, so maybe that's all that is.
Probably.
But the other issue is I can see, I'm the delegation chair, and I can see everything that's going on in the Q&A, but none of my other delegates can. It just shows up as blank for them. I'm just wondering if that's normal, and if not, if there's a way we can fix that.
It is normal. Q&A is visible to panelists, but it's not visible to attendees. That's why we have Tyler is actually monitoring it to make sure that we catch all of these interrupting motions. I have 2 points of personal privilege. Louisiana Delegate Daniel Hayes says there's multiple members in Louisiana that are locked out. Mr. Fishman, if you can work with Mr. Hayes on that.
This is Whitney Billiou from Texas Delegate Chair, and I'm not able to type in the Q&A for my point of personal privilege or point of order, either one. But there was a couple questions in the Q&A points of order asking about how we differentiate between delegates and alternates in this count. If the quorum is based on how many delegates are actually registered or how many delegate seats are actually being occupied at that time, this participant number actually includes alternates that may or may not be allowed to participate at any given moment because their delegation may be full of delegates. So how are we distinguishing between people who are participating as actual eligible delegates versus additional alternates that are just waiting in the wings, but also still counted as participants here?
I think we're only differentiating at the point that we get to balloting because the delegation chair can't submit more votes than they have delegates.
So then quorum doesn't matter for anything else we're doing?
If we get to that quorum point, it matters, and then we'll figure out.
How are we going to know what the number is though? If we don't know how many delegates alone are eligible?
If I could speak to that quickly, we will not be allowing alternates into the room when we do the actual convention. Only delegates will be in, and if a convention chair wants to change out a delegate for an alternate, we covered this earlier, they will notify me. There'll be a variety of different methods. I send that to the credentialing committee who will approve the swap of the delegate for the alternate, saying the alternate's there, and then it'll happen. But only delegates will be in the room, so no alternates will be counted.
Thank you.
Okay, I have Ohio Delegate Jeffrey Zweber for a point of personal privilege. Mr. Zweber. Ohio Delegate Jeffrey Zweber. All right, go ahead, Mr. Zweber.
Yes, I can no longer see the line of speakers.
Okay, I don't know how to fix that. I think it has something to do with your speaker view in Zoom.
No. It's because Karen Ann is sharing the motions, so we can only share one screen at a time. Okay. And so when the secretary is done sharing that, we'll put the speaker list back up.
Okay. Point of personal privilege from Delaware Delegate Will McVeigh. Go ahead, Mr. McVeigh.
Hi, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you got a chance to read through all that, but I think that it's important that we be able to know who is trying to raise a point of personal privilege, and if no one else can see the Q&A, there's no transparency or accountability there. We should also still, again, in compliance with Roberts in any way, shape, or form, be able to simultaneously communicate, even if it's not necessarily oral. And I would ask that you make sure everybody is aware that there is a Slack workspace that is open to all people interested in the Libertarian Party period, as well as people interested in the convention or participating in the convention, which does allow for simultaneous communication and has an alternative mechanism for raising points of privilege that and everybody can see.
Okay. Point of
I'm still on mute. There is that Slack workspace. People should join it.
Okay. Point of information from delegate Daryl Thomas. If we are missing delegates, i.e. Delaware has 4, but there's only 3 present, how do we count report we are missing delegates? I don't think I know that answer. But if I don't know that answer, then I can't answer your question. I have Indiana delegate with no name. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's Tim McGuire, state chair. That's actually one of my points. I don't know how to change my name on here.
We'll fix that, Tim McGuire.
And I don't have a way to communicate with you guys. I mean, should I just speak up if I have a motion or something?
Yes, if you're on the panel, you can raise your hand as you did, obviously. But if you have a point of order, you just have to unmute yourself and say it.
I'm going to promote Mr. McGuire right now.
Thank you.
And Dan, you said something about a phone number, but I don't have a phone number to communicate with.
Right. We'll be communicating that when we've been waiting to send out official things until the credentialing was done. So now the credentialing is done, we'll be sending out official contact lists.
Thank you.
Okay. I had Cynthia Welch. I don't know. Let's see, from what delegation are you, Cynthia Welch?
Texas alternate.
Just Texas.
Texas alternate, okay. Did you just want to get your name changed so that you're acknowledged as an alternate from Texas, Ms. Welch?
Listed as a Texas alternate. And I want to say thank y'all for doing this. I really appreciate that we're going forward in 2020 with this type of thing. Thank y'all.
Thank you. California delegate June Jenis. Go ahead, June. Right.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how I could keep up with the Slack for my state and Zoom at the same time. I'm having a miserable time with it. That was my point. I couldn't figure out how to get out of the Zoom session without leaving it in order to go back to my browser or the main level of Windows and go into another window for Slack. So I'm not sure you guys can do anything about that, but I'm really confused about how this whole thing is going to work at this point. Sorry.
I cannot help you on that, June.
Okay.
Ohio alternate Stephen Babka.
Is it in order to call the question on the credentials report?
It is in order to move that we end debate on the question of the credentials report. Is there objection to ending debate on the credentials report?
No.
Mr. Speaker, there's a point of order, or Mr. Chair, there's a point of order
From
California delegate Joseph Dane.
all right, let's find Mr. Dean. Please raise your point of order, because I was under the impression that the initial adoption of the credentials report, if there is an objection, is debatable. Is that not correct?
Hi, that's kind of my point. You presented the credentials report was presented, and then there was no opportunity to debate, and I had to raise a point of order because you asked if there's objection. So this is a general procedural problem. If people have an objection, how are they supposed to indicate an objection? I presume I'm not supposed to have to use a point of order. I should be able to raise my hand, but you ignored me when I raised my hand. That's why I made the point of order.
No, it's you have to put in the Q&A, because if people are already in line, if the hand raising is being used as being in line with the microphone.
So you're saying, clarification, you're saying that the way you object to a motion, if the chair says is there any objection to X? The way that somebody is supposed to express an objection is by putting it in the Q&A.
Correct.
Okay, that was not clear. Okay, now let me actually make my point about why I was objecting. This credentials report strikes me as conceptually very different from what is normally required of a credentials report. Credentials report normally does nothing to do with how many people are in the room. And yet that is what the credentials report that was given here seems to be. There was a question about delegates versus alternates. And I think that was a legitimate question because we always normally have that. We should also know how many total possible people there are from all states combined, which would be the number of people from each state, whether they're alternates or delegates combined, that could make up a potential delegates for that state. And then we should have a total of that number. When I was secretary, I always did that kind of report.
Thank you.
But the more basic fundamental thing that's wrong here is that you're reporting it based on the number of people in quote in the room. And as was correctly pointed out, that changes completely, changes all the time. I asked the question, how are we distinguishing?
So does the number in the room live?
I can't see a number in the room. Oh, that only panelists can see that. I heard a number. I was told this was the number of people who were signed in. But when I asked these questions yesterday of the chair and the secretary and the credentials committee, I got a response back on Facebook from the chair of the credentials committee that logging in and being credentialed were not the same thing, that there was going to be a registration process analogous to signing in at a table. I was not asked to go through any such thing. It looks
Mr.
like
Dean?
you're trying to shortcut it
Mr.
and
Dean?
say that people who are
Mr.
in the
Dean,
room at a
is
particular
this Mr. Dean?
yes.
Is this a point of order?
No, it is
debate?
it is debate on the credentials report.
But you said we weren't allowed to have debate on the credentials report.
No,
That
I
was the
said we
point of
are
order you
allowed to
raised.
have debate on credentials report. Of course you can have debate on credentials report. Typically in a convention, the credentials report will say something like, here are the numbers. People should be allowed to question the numbers. It'll say things like, there are 5 delegates from Alabama who may or may not be qualified for this reason. And then we go into debate on those things. That's right.
I'm ready for you to go into debate, please.
I am debating. I'm debating that this is an inadequate report. It should not be accepted because it doesn't represent what a credentials report should contain.
Thank you.
It is deficient, and we need a different kind of report.
Okay. So Mr. Dean objects.
There's another point of order.
Where's the other point of order?
Delaware Delegate Will McVeigh raises a point of order.
So the point of order from Will McVeigh is that the question was called. We had Mr. Babka who called the question. Mr. Dean did a point of order saying that there was debate. Mr. Dean was able to sneak debate in when we were actually moving to a vote on whether or not to end debate, but that happened. We now need to move to a vote on
a point of order from California Delegate Aaron Starr.
Oh my
Mr.
God.
Starr, what's your point of order? Where is California Delegate Aaron Starr? Go ahead, Mr. Starr. What's your point of order?
I think it's more of a point of inquiry in the
well, if it's
secretary.
Not, if it's not point of, is it a point of order or not?
Well, the secretary is supposed to be given a list of the names.
So it's not a point of order?
Well, if she's not given us the list of the names, it's a point of order. So I guess my question is—
the list of what names?
The delegates. So whoever's credentialed, according to
that is not a point of order.
Yes, it is.
That is not a point of order. We are moving to a question of whether or not to end debate. That is not in order. What is the problem with moving to the vote on ending debate?
If there's no list.
How is ending debate not in order right now?
I don't think any of us has seen this list.
How is ending debate not in order right now, Mr. Starr?
There's no way to contest a list if you can't see.
How is ending debate not in order? It has been moved to end debate. How is that not in order? Thank you, Mr. Starr. We'll now move to a vote.
Point of personal privilege, Chairman.
Who was first with the point of personal privilege?
Dr. Dean Ahmed from Maryland.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, once again, I have no means to raise my hand, and also now no means to enter even something in the Q&A.
Okay, you can unmute your mic if you need to interrupt.
All right, then I would like to interrupt in order for purposes of continuing debate. But if you recognize the motion to close debate, then I will wait until that vote is taken.
Let's do that vote.
There are several points of personal privilege in the Q&A, and I believe you can take them in order if you wish.
Okay. We have a point of personal privilege from Tim Ferreira that all privilege motions should be handled in Q&A. That is correct. If you have a point of personal privilege or an objection or a second or a point of order, you can enter that in the Q&A. Oklahoma Delegate Rex Lawhorn raises a point of order. The motion is incomplete without the list. I do find that it is in order. The motion is not incomplete without the list. The number is what is moved into the meeting, and with a reference to the actual list that caused the Credentials Committee to report that number. All right. It has already been objected to closing debate. I know there's objection to closing debate. I'm aware of the objection to closing debate. That's why we're about to move to a vote on whether or not to close debate. Mr. Fishman.
This is to close debate, correct?
Yes, the motion on the floor is a motion to close debate on the credentials, on the motion to accept the credentials report. So shall we close debate?
There's a point of personal privilege that the motion has not been seconded.
I believe there has been a second for the motion to close debate.
There was a second, yeah.
And there's plenty of seconds. All right. So the question of shall we close debate? You should all have a poll coming up whether or not to close debate on the credentials report. Please vote. We will hold the vote open for these polls. We can hold them open for
1 minute, please, sir.
1 minute. So we are now 20 seconds in whether or not to close debate. There's been a request to make sure that we have abstain in the next one.
Yes, sorry.
I believe California Delegate Alicia Matson is raising a privilege point. There are also a point of information and also a point of personal privilege now queued up behind it as well, Mr. Chair.
All right, we'll go to California Delegate Alicia Matson.
We have passed 1 minute. I'm going to close the polling.
I just wanted to address the chair's assertion that that motion, the credentials report is proper without a list, but that's contrary to Robert's Rules, page 615, which indicates, the motion to adopt should include an attached list.
Does the motion to adopt include an attached list of a in-person convention? Because I've never seen that.
I get electronic copies of it. Yes, the credentials committee.
I assume we have
sent
the
me-
similar electronic copy in this situation.
We can.
Well, we should ask the secretary.
All right.
The report
now
result of the poll, closed debate 357 aye, 102 nay.
All right. We will be done with debate and move to a vote on the credentials report.
We have
The
a
next-
point of personal privilege and a point of order.
Point of personal privilege.
California
Nobody
Delegate
took.
June.
We'll take her hand down. That's easy.
And a point of order from Oklahoma Delegate Rex Lawson.
Rex Lawhorn.
Lawhorn, sorry, misread.
Okay. I just have to find Mr. Lawhorn to let him raise his point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Lawhorn. What's your point of order? Mr. Lawhorn, what's your point of order? Mr. Lawhorn.
He said that he doesn't have a mic. He wants us to introduce unmute Oklahoma delegate Whitfield. Whitfield, Oklahoma delegate, is unmuted.
Okay.
Hello. So part of the purpose of the credentials report is that everyone can see and agree and verify that the attending delegates are available. We do not have access to that information.
Is that a point of order?
It is a point of order.
How is it a point of order?
Because
how is what we're doing not in order?
Because the original motion to accept the credentials report requires an accompanying list, or at least the ability to verify, visually or through.
We don't allow that. We do not allow that in an in-person convention. I will not allow it here.
We do allow that in an in-person convention because we can actually see who is present.
Yeah, but you don't get to verify the list.
No, but we do get to verify whether or not it's appropriate. It gives us the ability to know whether or not we can agree on the credentialed list.
This is not a point of order, Mr. Lawhorn. Your point of order is not well taken. We'll now move to a vote.
There's a point of order from South Carolina Delegate Matthew Hicks.
Mr. Hicks, find him and allow him to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Hicks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if point of order is the right terms, but I'm no parliamentarian, so bear with me, please. Could we have the panelists, if possible, mute their microphones when they're not actively speaking? I'm getting a lot of background chatter with children and pinging and all this stuff. And then on top of it, some pretty unprofessional exclamations and profanity being called out when some of the delegates are trying to speak.
Okay, we will try and work on that.
Thank you, sir.
New York alternate raises objection to accepting the report. That objection is not well taken. We're already in a vote on whether to accept the report. California delegate Aaron Starr believes he has a point of order. We will find out. Mr. Starr.
Yes, thank you. Am I unmuted?
You are.
Thank you. So when I'm looking on page 616 of Robert's Rules of Order, it says, and it's talking about actually presenting the report, it says the committee chairman concludes the report by saying, on behalf of the committee, I move that the roll of delegates hereby submitted be the official roll of the voting members of the convention, end quote. And then it says the report with the attached list of names should then be handed to the chair or to the secretary. So has the secretary and the chair received this list of names?
For purposes of tonight, sure.
Good.
Fair enough. So now we'll move to a vote on whether to accept the credentials report. You should all have a poll, yes, no, or abstain. We will keep that poll open for 1 minute.
I didn't get a poll. This is Mimi from California.
Hang on 1 second. I'm going to have to restart the poll. I forgot to include panelists. I apologize.
Okay, we're going to relaunch the poll. Make sure we have all the panelists in it as well. Once that poll is relaunched, we will hold it open for 1 minute. Step away for that minute.
Has the poll gone out? Because I still didn't get it. This is Mimi from California.
Do you see it now, Ms. Robson?
Yes, I got it just after I asked.
Yeah, I apologize for my slow typing.
That's okay. I just was checking.
I have a point of order. I'm unable to type in the Q&A. This is Dalton Brown, Delegation Chair for North Dakota.
And Mr. Fishman, I did not get the poll.
You are correct. We're going to have to rework your account after this.
Okay, I won't worry about it then.
If you are a panelist and not able to get in the Q&A, Mr. Brown, to raise a point of order, you just unmute your microphone and say it.
Thank you.
We are about 45 seconds into the poll on adopting the credentialing report.
Ned Kelly, Kansas delegate and chair. I also cannot get into the Q&A.
I believe that is the case if you're a panelist.
Yeah, state chairs can unmute themselves and say point of order.
All right, we have hit the 1 minute mark on the poll. We have a total of, we have 325 yes, 100 no, and 65 abstentions. The credentials report is accepted. We will now move to adopting or entertain motions to adopt an agenda for the evening. Florida Delegate Omar Requero. Let's see, Mr. Requero, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Requero.
In an operational setting, should we leave the notes up or do we want the speaker list on the screen right now? Because I think the delegates would prefer to see the speaker list.
I think the speakers list is probably the right thing to have up right now. And is Mr. Requero able to talk? All right, we're gonna move on to Oregon Delegate Timothy Perkins.
There is a point of personal privilege from Texas Delegate Clayton Hunt. I'm not sure if it's a serious one.
It's unlikely to be serious, but Mr. Hunt would like to lower the temperature in the room. I think Mr. Hunt is able to do that himself.
There is a point of order from Tennessee alternate Suzanne Eltz.
As far as whether or not alternates were receiving ballots on the polls, it's not that big of a deal. You know,
if I could speak to that, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Fishman.
So right now, this is testing training for everybody. We put all the delegates and all the alternates in the room together because we want you to all understand how it works. We understand that in a real environment, there is a distinction between delegates and alternates, and we will have a room that is only delegates. But for right now, we want everybody to have an experience of what it's like because you never know when you're an alternate, you might be called up to the big leagues. So for the purpose of this is not strictly de rigueur. We are assuming that everybody here is a delegate right now.
All right, Oregon Delegate Tim Perkins. Go ahead, Mr. Perkins. All right, we're going to move on past Mr. Perkins.
Mr.
Michigan
Chair?
Delegate. Yes.
Just a procedural question, perhaps. Chris and I should switch screens like every few minutes so that delegates get to see alternate between speakers list and notes of motions and things like that. I could just stop sharing every few minutes and she can start sharing so we're not walking on top of each other.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Michigan Delegate Scotty Bowman.
Hi. My thought here is, and this was, my original objection.
Is this a motion, Mr. Bowman?
Well,
is it a motion, Mr. Bowman?
Yeah, it's a motion to reconsider
to do what?
The report.
Did you vote in the prevailing side on the credentials report?
No.
All right, then that's out of order.
There's a
Moving on, New York
point
alternate
of
Mike
personal
Long.
privilege.
Oh, sorry.
Point of personal privilege from Mr. Goldstein, though I believe it may have been addressed. He says his hand is raised, but he is not on the list.
It's moving that way. All right. I had New York alternate Mike Long. Go ahead.
Yes, sorry about that. So I just wanted to check my understanding between an alternate and a delegate. And my understanding was that an alternate only fills in when a particular delegate is not able to attend the convention, and that a delegate is the actual person picked by their state to represent them at the party. Is that correct?
Yeah, if one of the delegates is unable to serve, and an alternate can serve in their stead to make sure that the state has a total number of delegates serving as to fill their allotment.
So that would be up to the state chair of New York to decide, and for all the state chairs to decide which alternate and when that alternate will be available.
Correct.
And that alternate will get an email, right?
Correct. The state chairs determine which alternates are brought up and what order they're brought up, whether through a ranked alternate process in some states or just the discretion of the chair.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it, Nick.
Okay. You're welcome. Pennsylvania Delegate Steve Sheets.
Mr. Chair, I call the question, and I hope to God that everybody else will stop asking questions about this and just vote on whether or not we're going to accept the credential.
We're past that, Mr. Sheets. We're actually at a point where I'm waiting to entertain a motion to adopt an agenda of voting on the presidential nomination for 2016.
There is a
Point of order.
point of personal privilege.
Well, I've got a point of order and a point of personal privilege.
Yeah,
So,
this is Dean Ahmed of
Go
Maryland.
ahead,
with the point of
Dr.
order.
Ahmad.
I believe that when it comes to the adoption of the agenda, that it's not necessary to have a separate motion made, that it is on the agenda, because you got to have an agenda before you can have any motions.
Yeah, I suppose that's correct. But without a motion to adopt an agenda that's just for presidential nomination, we would have the agenda be what is standard in the convention rules, which is,
Okay,
platform
so you're asking for an amendment to the agenda.
Yes, yes. And
Okay.
this is how we would do
In that case, all right. Thank you. And I'll just raise my hand, and if no one else has made the motion, I will.
Okay, so Dr. Ahmad, are you moving to adopt an agenda of voting for the 2016 presidential nomination?
Yes. And the vice presidential nomination.
And the vice presidential. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection
Sorry,
to it?
I wasn't paying attention.
Is there any objection to adopting that as the agenda?
Mr. Chair, this is Ned Kelly, Kansas.
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
I don't have an objection per se, but I do want to make sure any and all motions get fully written on screen and people have a chance to read it before they're adopted without objection.
We're working on that. So
Yes.
that's Dr. Ahmad has moved to adopt the agenda. That should be shared on the screen. I did not hear any objection to adopting the agenda. And so the agenda will be so adopted.
Mr. Chair, point of
Wait, sorry, who's got the point of personal privilege?
Harold Thomas, Ohio.
Go ahead, Mr. Thomas.
Delegate, I have no access to the question and answer screen.
Right. You can just, if you have an interrupting motion like an objection, you can just unmute yourself.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Who is that?
This is Ned Kelly, Kansas again.
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
And this is more about logistics, and I guess it's a request. For the actual convention, could you not go through those, without objection motions so quickly? I think it's really important in this type of procedure, doing this on Zoom, that everyone has. You said without objection.
I can go slower.
Yeah, go slower. Make sure it's written, and make sure everyone has a chance to see exactly how it's written, so that a motion doesn't become the exact opposite of the motion that was originally made, like happened the other night. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right.
There are points of order in the Q&A, beginning with Louisiana Delegate Daniel Hayes.
I believe that the motion to adopt the agenda to move for vote in presidential and vice presidential nomination is on the screen, and that addresses Mr. Hayes's point of order.
Would you like me to launch that poll, sir?
Not quite yet. I just want to check. Washington alternate Sharon Doherty says point of order, is it appropriate to use the Q&A when there's a call for objections? It is. And I did not see any Q&A or objection. So we are going
There is now an objection in Q&A.
There is now an objection, but I did not hear an objection at the time. So we are going to move. I think we just adopt the agenda. Yes, Dr. Ahmad.
Yes, when you said the motion is now on the screen, it actually wasn't on the screen. The notes that I was able to see were notes subsequent to the motion. I could not.
Mr. Chair, it was in fact on the screen. I believe maybe Dr. Ahmad needs to resize or something on his end.
Okay.
Right now, I don't see, are any of your notes on the screen at the moment? Because I don't see anything. I just see the 4 panelists.
Dr. Ahmad, I turn off my screen occasionally so the speakers list can come up. Ms. Crawford and I alternate between our screens.
I understand that. Right now, neither the speaker list nor your notes are up. And I think at a time like this, where we're going to vote on a motion, it would be more valuable to see what the motion is.
Done.
I was just going to accept this agenda as being adopted without objection. New York alternate Chris Olensky. We're going to recognize Mr. Olensky.
Why?
Oh, because it needs to be done. Mr. Olensky, go ahead with your objection. Yes, Mr. Olensky.
Hello, Nick. I had an objection, and this was an issue that was, and this as far as the credentials.
Your objection.
I did not, I objected to the actual numbers being valid as reported, and this is on the basis of several people.
Objection is out of order. That objection is out of order. That report has already been adopted. Objection is out of order. Your objection is out of order.
I've addressed this issue several times about people not having
order, Mr. Olensky.
email. There's no phone numbers. How do we have?
Your objection is out of order.
How do you know that there's people?
You are out of order, Mr. Olensky.
You are out of order,
Mr. Olensky. You will come into order.
Are there people on the phone right now?
Mr. Olensky, you are out of order.
Nobody got a phone link.
All right, moving along.
Mr. Chair, there's a point of personal privilege. Louisiana Delegate Daniel Hayes says the agenda is not, in fact, on the screen.
I believe I'm looking at the agenda on the screen. Move to adopt agenda to move to a vote for presidential and vice presidential nomination. I'm looking at it on the screen. Delaware delegates objection to the agenda. Will McVeigh is late.
There's a point of personal privilege from Minnesota Delegate Justin Jelinek.
I promoted.
Oh, all right, that's been taken care of. Yeah, everyone who thinks that the agenda is going to look something like other than the motion to adopt the agenda, it's a one-item agenda. That is what you're going to see on the screen. We have already, this agenda has been adopted without objection. That is what has happened. Now, moving back on to speakers. Actually, the next item is to move to votes for president in 2016.
Point of order. This is Mimi
Who has
Robson
the
from
point of order? Go
California.
ahead, Ms. Robson.
My delegates have told me that in the Q&A they were typing in objection. So
Objection to what, Ms.
I've been
Robson?
asked objection to adopting the agenda when you said there was no objections.
Yes, their objections were late and they were not taken.
Okay.
Missouri delegate Cecil Insay moves to call the question.
There is no question currently on the table. We have adopted the agenda. We are now moving to nominations for president for 2016.
There is another point of personal privilege that the agenda is not on the screen. They're seeing minutes and not the agenda is.
That's what you're going to see is the minutes as they go.
Point of personal privilege. This is Whitney Billieu from Texas.
Ms. Billieu, go ahead.
Aaron Adams, one of the Oklahoma delegates, is saying that she still has not received an invitation to this and that this is not the first time. So she's still not able to participate.
I'll follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. California delegate Joe Dean raises what is alleged to be a point of order. Fine, Mr. Dean. Go ahead, Mr. Dean.
Yes, my point of order, which was relevant to the thing that you claim was adopted without objection, is that you can't just wave your hand, say there's a motion, and then say without objection. If the way we have to object is by typing something, if we have to type a message in order to object, you have to give us a chance to read the motion. And my point of order that I was trying to make at that time is that the motion, which we were allegedly passing without objection, was not even clear. It was not well formed. It said to move, to move, to move. What does that mean? Was this to replace a new agenda?
Vote for presidential and vice presidential nomination. Which part of that is not well formed?
Moved to adopt. No, it's now changed. It's now changed. The text on the screen is not what it was when I typed my point of order. That's another problem. If we're relying on the secretary,
no longer relevant.
No, it is extremely relevant. It is relevant to the entire process of making objections. If we are going to be doing this by text, if we are going to be,
because they're forcing us to do it online.
If we have to do it online and we have to do it by text, the text has to be understandable and we have to have times to type in our objection. You are acting as though we're all in a room and we can all shout out. And that's true for 30 or so people who are in a special position. They can shout out objection if they want. The rest of us have to open a Q&A thing, type in a word. And by the time we do that, you say, oh, there's no objection. And then you say we're late. That's not an adequate procedure.
Mr. Chairman, may I address Mr. Dean's objection?
Go ahead, Dr. Mon.
I think his objection is well taken. The rules of order do require that the chair reads the motion that is being considered. So even after when the motion is made and the secretary, it would be hopeful. Well, I think perhaps then under the current system, it may be necessary for you to do so more than once in order that people not be confused and in order that people have enough time to make objections. So you might just say the motion on the floor is, read it again, say, are there any objections? And then wait maybe a minute or two for people to be able to type if they have an objection. This is a friendly suggestion, sir.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have no capability for Q&A nor hand raising ability.
Yes, no, if you have to interrupt, you should have hand raising ability if you open their participant screen, Mr. Blitz.
Well, I don't. That's the issue. Sorry. That's why I had to interrupt. Otherwise I wouldn't have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we don't seem to have the ability to open up the video screen. I've been trying it. It says I'm disabled from that. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
So just to be clear, when we started this one, we disabled panelist video by accident. Won't happen in the real thing. Normally you'll be able to start video. People who are panelists, state chairs, click on the participant button. You'll see a pop-up that says panelists and attendees. Under the panelists screen, if you look in the, you'll see 3 dots in the bottom right-hand corner, and raise your hand is under there.
but it's not, that's just the issue. I'm clicking on the participants and there's,
Do you see the list of all the panelists now?
yeah, now I see the list, but there's nothing.
At the
on
bottom
of
right
the
hand
screen.
corner, do you see 3 dots?
Nope.
I will follow up with you
No, sir.
offline, Mr. Blitz.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, there's a number of points of personal privilege and points of order.
All right,
beginning
I'm going to
with
start with Mr. Dixon's parliamentary inquiry. Mr. Dixon, go ahead.
This is your first hour.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Yes, my parliamentary inquiry is it in order to move the adoption of approval voting for the nomination?
I don't believe it's in order. I mean, it could theoretically be in order, but if it's in order, you're suspending the rules because there are convention rules about how the nomination is voted on.
Correct. It would be a suspension of the rule 7-2. Would it be in order at this time?
It is. I believe it's in order to make a motion regarding how the votes are done prior to the nomination. Yes, so that is in order. Are you making that?
Would you allow me to make that motion right now? I don't want to jump the line.
Yeah, you'll have to get in line.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right. Point of parliamentary inquiry from Ohio delegate Homer Taft. Do we have to enter the nominations of candidates? I think we should go through that because in a normal process, nomination of candidates is done from the floor, at least nominally. There's points of personal privilege about the agenda not being shown. The agenda for tonight is the presidential and vice presidential vote. And so I apologize that it's not shown at this time. California alternate Tyler Bratton challenges a ruling of the chair, although I'm not really sure which one, but we'll see if we can unmute him so he can tell us what important challenge to the ruling of the chair he has. Go ahead, Mr. Bratton.
Mr. Chair, I objected to your ruling and it wasn't
Which
heard
one?
and closed. I'm sorry?
Which ruling?
The ruling that you just ruled on
Which one was that?
about closing. You know, you said that you're not going to take any more questions on it, and I had already objected.
On what?
You have to state the last word for word. I'm not sure. It had to do with the voting on presidential and vice presidential with the agenda, to approve the agenda, and I objected. And there was no. You said I was late, but I can't talk. I typed it in, and so now I'm challenging your ruling.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a
Yes,
point?
Dr. Ahmad.
I think there's obviously some confusion about the decision on the closing of on the vote on the adoption of the agenda. Perhaps we should just go ahead and take a yes no vote on that. Show the do you have the? Okay.
I think this entire thing is dilatory and we're done, Dr. Ahmad, but I appreciate your suggestion.
Well, I'm thinking that my suggestion would save time since taking a vote would take 2
No,
minutes.
saying it's dilatory is going to save time. Point of order, nominations tonight are to be for 2020. I find that it is in order to adopt an agenda for the 2016 vice presidential and presidential vote, and that is what we're going to proceed with. New Hampshire delegate Darrell Perry has a point of order.
2020.
New Hampshire delegate Darrell Perry. Gotta find you to unmute you, New Hampshire delegate Darrell Perry. Why can I not find him? I'm trying to recognize Daryl Perry. And I
I
cannot
have,
unmute him.
Okay, I appear to be unmuted.
Go ahead.
Now. So I have a point of order regarding the nominations that you said are generally made from the floor. For president and vice president, we use nomination tokens. And since we do not have those readily available, would it be in order to make a motion to use the names that were officially entered into nomination in 2016?
I believe you could make such a motion to nominate which names? The top 5?
There were 6 people that were officially entered into nomination for president, and I do not remember how many were officially entered into nomination for vice president.
Who were the 6, President?
Was Johnson, Peterson, McAfee, Perry, Feldman, and McCormick for president. I can pull up the minutes from 2016 real quick and tell you.
You're missing Peterson.
I thought I said Peterson.
He said
I'm
Peterson.
sorry.
He's correct.
Yeah, no, I'm talking to the secretary.
Okay. Give me one second.
So that
I have
have
the
been
minutes
nominated.
pulled up.
Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Yep, I'm getting the list for vice president.
We'll get to that later. Let's do one election at a time.
Yep.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Nominations don't actually need a second, but I appreciate it. There is a point of parliamentary inquiry from Delaware Delegate Will McVeigh, whether or not it's in order to move to rescind the adoption of the agenda. Mr. McVeigh?
Wants to see you eating corn.
I don't know. Why would you rescind the adoption of the agenda, Mr. McVeigh?
For the purposes of amending it to add things.
That's actually a motion to Mr. McVeigh, do you think that there's any chance of this motion passing?
I don't know. I'm actually not incredibly capable of communicating with the other delegates that are credentialed in on the floor at the moment. So I can't really read the room all that well. So I'm asking you if it's in order. I haven't made the motion yet. I've got my hand up, but I'm doing it.
I think at such point as we get to you in the queue, it would be in order. I don't think it's likely to pass, but it would be.
I'll take that under advisement, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege.
Who is saying point of personal privilege?
Tim McGuire.
Go ahead, Mr. McGuire.
I have a couple delegates that are having trouble getting in. I don't know who to talk to about that.
I think that's a Mr. Fishman question. But
Yep. Have the state chairs, have them contact their state chairs and send their email addresses to me.
Do I email that to you?
Yes. xd@lp.org.
xd@lp.org. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Jennifer
Fishman?
Lalonde as the Idaho delegate chair, and hopefully she can get promoted to be able to see participants. I believe if she's delegate chair, she should be a panelist.
Got it.
I am no longer accepting dilatory motions to challenge the ruling of the chair on the adoption of the agenda. I'm not accepting any of them. California delegate Kenneth Olson raises a point of personal privilege regarding delegate Edward Bowers being unable to get into the Zoom meeting. Texas delegate Eric Van Single raises a point of order. Questions on the agenda are out of order. We're debating a closed topic. We are not moving on with this agenda stuff anymore. Ohio delegate Michael Lopez raises a point of order about it being 2020. The agenda adopted was for the 2016 vote. Missouri delegate Cecil Ince calls for orders of the day. We are actually in orders of the day. Point of order, Wesley Pinchot wants to know why we're voting. That's not actually a point of order. There's motions to close debate are not debatable. Arizona delegate Michael Kielski needs to be promoted to delegate chair. McVeigh, point of order from Tim Ferreira about whether or not McVeigh's motion to change the nomination process, or to nominate. There was no motion yet. I'm not accepting the appeal from the ruling of the chair that the agenda discussion is dilatory, Mr. McVeigh. Point of information, can the polling feature be used to verify the number of people in the room? Maybe. Montana delegate Jason Kitson says he cannot get in. I am a Montana delegate, which is odd because they're in here. All right. We've now cleared our points of order to the extent some of them were. We will move back to, we have nominations that were made by Mr. Perry for the 5 names that, for the 6 names that were nominated in 2016.
Mr. Chair, point of order from California delegate.
Yes.
There's a point of order from California delegate Tim Ferreira.
Yes, Mr. Perry did not make a motion to change the nomination process. He made a motion to nominate those 6 names. I'm going to recognize Delaware delegate Will McVeigh. Mr. McVeigh, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if you're going to rule that any questions regarding the agenda are dilatory after you rush through the objection phase and then not accept an appeal that those of your ruling that they're dilatory, then how exactly are we supposed to have this discussion?
We're not having this discussion, Mr. McVeigh.
So you're not even going to entertain it. If somebody seconds it, we're not going to
have tonight. I'm not. No, Mr. McVeigh, I'm not, because everyone here, there are 600 people here who are trying to learn how to do this, and you are wasting time. And we're not going to.
It's going to happen on Friday, Mr. Chairman. You're out your mind.
Mr. McVeigh, the delegates will do what they will do, but you're done.
I'm trying to help them practice.
All right. Point of order, Mr. Starr. Go ahead, Mr. Starr, raise your point of order.
Just as a practice run here, have all the candidates indicate they accept the nomination, and are they all eligible?
All of them have indicated that they accept the nomination, one from beyond the grave. We're in the upside down.
I would like to nominate an additional candidate.
Mr. Lucchini from New Mexico, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'm moved to nominate Justin Amash retroactively to back to 2016.
That one is out of order because he was not eligible at that time.
Dang it.
All right. Montana delegate Jacob Kitson has a point of order.
I would suggest we put the speaker list back on the screen so people can see how long it is.
Yeah. Can we find Montana delegate Jacob Kitson so that he can say his point of order? Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Mr. Kitson. What's your point of order? Mr. Kitson, go ahead.
Mr. Kitson types that there is no number for him to call in.
I don't. He's going to have to look at his invitation.
I'll follow up on that.
Okay. All right. I'm going to look to see if there's any interrupting motions. Point of order from Daniel Hayes. How do I nominate Larry Sharpe? If you're in the queue, we're doing nominations and we'll try and get through the queue. Point of personal privilege for Ohio alternate Sue and Babka. Your hand's raised, but you don't see your name in the list. I think we can get that resolved.
It's that far down.
Right. Louisiana Delegate Rufus Craig.
I believe this was answered earlier, but I've got no video of anyone but you and Mr. Fishman and Kara Ann. Is there a reason we can't see each other?
Yeah, the setting was not set properly for tonight for other panelists to have video. It will be done differently next time. Pennsylvania alternate James Weeks.
Motion to close nominations.
I'm going to take that as being out of order right now because I'm aware that there are other people in line to nominate.
Well, then can I motion to nominate Vermin Supreme?
Not in 2016.
He was eligible.
Was he eligible in 2016?
Yes.
If he was eligible in 2016, then yes, Vermin Supreme's added for 2016. Or added to the nominations for tonight. California Delegate Tim Ferreira. Go ahead, Mr. Ferreira.
Yes, sorry, one of these things is from a long time ago. I just wanted to thank Daniel Fishman for changing the polling results to show the number and the percentage. That was very helpful instead of just seeing the percentage like we did previously, so thank you for that. And then I had a question on the nomination process that we will be doing for real when we're out of this practice session. Will we be doing it like this where one at a time we're nominated, or will there be tokens? Have we discovered that?
I believe we'll do tokens like we do in a normal convention, and then there will be set time for speeches like there are in a normal convention.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Louisiana Delegate Chad Lemoine.
Hi, yes, thank you. Okay, I had a question. Earlier we had a couple of polls, I think, that didn't go out to everyone, and there were some folks who knew they didn't get the poll, some folks who knew that other people didn't get the poll. How are we, since this is like the main reason why we're doing this online portion of the convention, how are we going to secure the fact that everyone got the poll and everyone was able to vote before votes are finally collected and tallied?
So for actual elections, you don't do it by polling. You do it through tallies by delegation that are submitted in writing.
Okay, so this is just the polling that we're doing is only for the business of the.
That's just for yeses and nos.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a point of personal privilege from Louisiana Delegate Keith Thompson.
Will we be doing a Zoom test where we vote through state delegation chairs, Mr. Fishman?
Yes, I will be listing a testing schedule for next week that will include some of those.
All right.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Mr. Lucchini.
Is it possible as part of the agenda or some other rule to limit the length of time for both basically all of these various privileged motions and etc.? Can we limit them, or is it just simply open?
You can't limit privileged motions, but I've been trying to identify whether or not we have privileged motions. Some of them that have been claimed to be privileged are not.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harlos.
just a point of information for yourself and Mr. Fishman. I believe I've come up with a way that we can have both the speakers list and my notes on the screen. I will get with Mr. Fishman after this meeting to experiment.
Outstanding. Thank you.
All right. Delaware Delegate Will McVeigh is next up to speak, I believe. Go ahead, Mr. McVeigh.
I was waiting for the dialogue to unmute. I move to rescind the adoption of the agenda for the purposes of amending it and expanding it to include more items of business for the Libertarian National Convention.
Is
And I
there
do have a second?
You do have a second. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think there's going to be a lot of issues with us gathering in person at any point in the future, and we should absolutely try to conduct as much business as we can while we're all gathered here in our assembled numbers of 400 and whatever of us there actually are, assuming you believe the credentials report.
Point of order.
The point of order is from where?
Mimi Robson, Sheriff California.
Go
My point of order is the motion being made for this test meeting only, or is this something that is trying to be done for the actual meeting that will be
We're
starting
only
next
where
Friday?
we are, so it's for tonight.
Okay.
This is a
All
simulation.
right, well, either way, I object to the motion.
Well, we'll just proceed. I mean, I think we're ready to proceed to a vote on the motion. So we'll set up a poll.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
is rescinding the agenda actually a motion to reconsider?
It's actually in the nature of an amendment by substitution because it's rescinding and then substituting a new agenda that's expanded.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harlos?
would it not be a motion to amend something previously adopted?
It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Same.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Harlos is correct. I don't think it would make any difference in terms of the number of votes required, but just as a technical matter, she is correct.
Well, as everyone knows, technically correct is the best kind of correct. All right, so we will move to a vote on rescinding the agenda to expand it.
Ohio Delegate Homer Taff objects to consideration of the question.
Your objection to consideration of the question is noted, but it seems like it would be a lot faster to just go to the vote.
Shall I launch the vote, sir?
Dale seconded somewhere that they knew who said
Q&A, I told him to do it.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Starr raises a point of order why I'm not asking for debate. I don't believe debate is necessary on the question. We're either going to rescind the agenda and get out of the nominations or we're not. Mr. Fishman, when you're ready with the poll. All right, there's now been a poll whether or not you vote to rescind our agenda. Okay, we're about halfway through. We've got about 400 of the 540 people present have voted so far. About 5 seconds left. All right, we have now just hit a minute. I believe we can close the poll. 470 people voted. 349 no, 65 yes, 56 abstain. The agenda will not be rescinded. Mr. Lawhorn from Oklahoma raises a point of personal privilege. Find Mr. Lawhorn.
Mr. Chair, you'll need to unmute Oklahoma Delegate Whitfield to get Mr. Lawhorn.
I guess is that Mr. Lawhorn isn't able to?
Yeah, they're sharing a computer.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Lawhorn has typed into the Q&A, what do the stars mean by the names in the delegation list?
Delegation.
Is that no? The stars are. I think the stars are only next to Mr. Fishman and Mr. Harris. Is that right?
I apologize. Yes, in the delegate, the 3 stars, we are not delegates. Mr. Harris and I are not delegates.
If you're referring to the stars under the Google Doc, those stars are a notation, an internal notation for us that that Chris is putting down so that I know that the person is not appearing with their hand raised, because the person with the star next to them is actually one of the people who got promoted on this call.
The asterisk is for the panelists.
Okay.
Because there's no other way to identify them as panelists.
Illinois Delegate John Phillips had a point of personal privilege.
Yes. Just a reminder to panelists: mute yourself if you're not speaking. I believe Mr. Kielski, if he hasn't been promoted to be a panelist, he should be, because the Arizona delegation chair had to leave.
Mr. Chairman.
Tim
McGuire. Yeah, Tim McGuire, Indiana. I'm just curious if Dan has gotten my email. I haven't gotten a response.
I confess I'm not reading email right now.
Okay.
Managing
So we don't have a way of getting delegates in that can't get in.
We're not right now. The list is the list that we have. I'm managing this screen. When we do the real thing, we'll have a lot more people, and I'll be monitoring that specifically. But at this current moment, I'm trying to manage this meeting.
Thank you.
All right. I have a parliamentary inquiry from Homer Taft. Find Mr. Taft. Go ahead, Mr. Taft. What's your parliamentary inquiry? Mr. Taft, Ohio Delegate Homer Taft. Mr. Taft, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, it just came up. I'm sorry. My question, Chair Sarwark, was I'm not quite sure why a motion to close nominations when made wasn't in order, but do we actually get to test this before 10 o'clock with a vote for president and a vote for vice president, which is the
I really
purpose of
would
the meeting?
I would love to. We're going to see whether or not we can get there. Point of order from Dr. Lieberman in California. That's not a point of order, Dr. Lieberman. The abstentions were counted in the percentages. I read out the actual numbers. If anything, it's a point of personal privilege, and we'll do our best. Point of order, is it possible at the end to generate reports of individual voting? Yes, with the email system we're using, people get their ballot back. All right. Now, back to the speakers list, since we're through with our privileged motions. I believe Pennsylvania Delegate Steve Sheets, that's the next person who's up.
I rise to nominate Derek Michael Reed from 2016 because he is the only candidate who says that he is able to save us.
Thank you, Mr. Sheets.
Right here.
Michigan Delegate Scotty Bowman. Go ahead, Mr. Bowman.
All right. I want to make sure that I can qualify a nomination if it's disqualified. Why was Justin Amash not qualified?
Because he wasn't qualified in 2016.
What did he have to do?
He wasn't a member of the party. He was not a member of the party in 2016.
Okay, I nominate Ron Paul.
I'm not aware that Ron Paul would accept that nomination.
Mr. Chair, could I suggest, in the interest of brevity and getting everything done by 10 o'clock, that people also nominate the vice presidential candidate, and I will put them on the same ballot. I know that's not strictly how we do it, but if people would like to vote on both president and vice president.
Yeah, to the extent we can, we'll do that. Arkansas Delegate Michael Kalagius. Find him. Go ahead, Mr. Kalagius. Go ahead, Arkansas Delegate Michael Kalagius.
Sorry, I was having some problems unmuting. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. If it is in order, I would like to drop the current slate and instead adopt the 2020 slate of those that have declared for president so that we can use this as an internal poll that we can actually use for our upcoming election.
I don't believe that's in order because I don't believe it's in order for a subsequent person to undo nominations already made. Colorado Delegate Wesley Pinchot. Go ahead, Mr. Pinchot. Go ahead, Mr. Pinchot. All right, we're going to go to, I don't know where your unmute is, Mr. Pinchot. It should be.
Okay, it just now showed up.
Go ahead.
Sorry if this is totally out of order, but you know how long it takes to get through the list of people, to speak. I move the formation of a committee to research and experiment with various infrastructure for online conventions and relevant bylaws and rules changes.
It is not in order.
Pardon me?
It is not in order.
It just seems to me that the current infrastructure is not working very well, and I wonder if anybody would care to comment on whatever.
It's not in order.
Okay.
Okay. Louisiana Delegate Chad Lemoine.
If I apologize if I left my hand raised. I did not intend to do so. I will make sure I lower my hand this time. I thought it was lowered. Apologize.
Okay. Texas Delegate Pat Dixon. Go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
Mr. Chair, I move a suspension of Rule 7.2 to nominate the presidential and vice presidential candidates by approval voting.
It's moved to suspend Rule 7.2 to allow approval voting for the presidential and vice presidential candidates. There's a second for that.
There's a second, an objection, and a point of order. I'll direct the chair's attention to the Q&A.
Okay, let me go to the point of order. Louisiana Delegate Michael Vogt. Where is Louisiana Delegate Michael Vogt? Mr. Vogt, go ahead. I think I got you able to talk. What's your point of
Hello?
order?
Yes,
Mr. Vogt.
I'm trying to find out if we had some sort of meeting to have a rule change to be able to have this online meeting. Our bylaws did not provide for any of this.
Our
So
bylaws,
how did we handle that?
Mr. Vogt, our bylaws do allow for it. The LNC is allowed to set the time and place of the convention. They called the convention to be online this upcoming weekend. That passed by a majority.
Time and
LNC,
place is not online. That's totally two
I've
different
ruled that it
things.
is. I've ruled that it is. The LNC has passed a motion to set the time and place.
I would like to challenge the chair on there to
You
show
don't
us
get to.
where that is.
I'm sorry. You can, in the actual online convention, you can make a motion to appeal that ruling at that time. It's not happening tonight.
All righty. I guess we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. The food is ready. Are you?
Right.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Where's the point of order?
It's Ms. Harros.
Yes.
Actually, and this might not be a point of order, please correct me if I'm incorrect. The LNC did not rule that. They ruled that this was an emergency bylaws meeting. It is allowed, but
it is not a point of order.
okay, thank you.
Because
I'll get in line.
Basically we're doing it. The LNC voted to do it.
I was just stating a different basis, that's all.
Okay. So right now we have a motion to suspend the rules to allow the presidential vote to be done by approval voting for president and vice president. There's been an objection to it. So what we will do is we will move to a vote on whether or not to proceed by approval voting. Mr. Starr raised a point of inquiry, but point of inquiry is not privileged. So
Should I launch the suspension of the rules vote?
I believe so. So this is a vote to suspend the rules to allow for approval voting for president and vice president. We are about 15 seconds in. So a yes vote would be to allow this to be done by approval voting. A no vote would have us do the normal rounds that we do under the convention rules.
What is the threshold for suspension of the rules?
It would be 2/3.
Point of personal privilege, I think.
Go ahead.
Tony DeRazio from the New York delegation. I'm having some in my delegation complaining that 60 seconds is too short. Could we extend the voting time to 90 seconds?
We might be able to consider doing that in the future. For this one, we're going to do 60 seconds, but maybe for the actual convention, we can go to 90. Especially, we might be closer to that 1,000 people. Tonight, we're running right at about 550 at a time.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right, we are just over a minute, and with 442 votes total, we have 211 yes, 189 no, 42 abstentions. 211 to 189 is not 2/3, and so we will proceed, or sorry, the motion to suspend the rules to proceed with approval voting fails. We'll now go back to the queue. New Hampshire Delegate Darrell Perry. Go ahead, Mr. Perry.
Yes, I would like to enter the following names into nomination for vice president, as they were the people that received 30 or more tokens in 2016. That
Go
would
ahead.
be William Weld, Larry Sharpe, Alicia Dern, Will Coley, Judd Weiss, and Derek Grayson.
Okay. Can you read those one more time just to make sure the secretary gets them?
Yes. Last names are Weld, Sharpe, Dern, Coley, Weiss, and Grayson.
Thank you.
And if the chair deems it in order, I would move to close nominations.
I will rule that to be in order. We are pretty
Second.
close. And unless there, I believe that we can just have nominations be closed. I am not, we're at 9:44, and if we want to get to an actual vote, we're going to allow nominations to be closed. I know that there are objections to closing nominations. If you guys really want to do this, we can have a vote on whether to close nominations. Mr. Fishman, go ahead. We're going to have a vote. Should nominations be closed? Whenever you're ready, Mr. Fishman. Sorry.
Yep.
All right. There's a vote for should nominations be closed going out. We will give it approximately a minute. We're about halfway through. You guys are getting a lot better at this polling thing because at 30 seconds in, we've already got 460 out of 534 have voted. So practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect.
But as my mother used to say, nobody's perfect, so why practice?
I wish there was a option for fuck no.
There is not. All right, we are just about to a minute and just over a minute with 491 votes, 426 yays, 49 nays, 16 abstentions. Nominations are closed. We are prepared to proceed to vote. Mr. Fishman, how do you and the secretary have a way to do this vote?
In this second, one moment, sir.
Virginia Delegate Juanita Billings raises a point of personal privilege that she did not receive the poll.
I feel very bad about that, but I can't go back in time until Mr. Supreme's time machine is made available to me.
I will report the results to the secretary after I send the vote out.
So you have all the names, Mr. Fishman, on each ballot?
I do. I can make them
Point
off
of
if you'd like me to.
information or order or something, I don't know. Is
Go
this
ahead,
going through
Mr.
delegation chairs?
This one is not going to.
Can it?
This one, we're going to use the email system.
I'm not set up to do it right now.
You're going to confuse my delegates.
I don't think that we can stop from confusing them a little bit.
My delegates can handle it.
Mr. Fishman, how did you want to proceed with those ballots?
I will send it out. It is going to, this one is going to delegates only. Let me keep going and I will send it in one.
Do you want to read those names just to verify them?
Sure.
This is Whitney Billiou, Texas Delegation Chair. Real quick on just with regard to the person who said they did not get a ballot. For future reference, if that happens, is it verifiable, number one? And did I hear you say, Mr. Fishman, that you were going to send her one real quick and then let her vote on it and then share the results with the secretary, or is that on something else?
No, that is the presidential and vice presidential.
Okay.
And that
so
ballot hasn't gone out yet. I believe
okay, so if someone does say that that they did not get a ballot, we're just going to ignore it.
If you did not get a, there's two different things.
This is a poll. that we were talking about.
Yeah,
here.
I'm talking about the poll that went out a minute ago, whatever we're calling those. If someone claims that they did not get one, is the procedure going to be to ignore that and
It
move
is,
on? And they
because
did.
it's like walking into the room and saying I didn't vote on a voice vote.
Not really, because
Yes, it's really
person-
just like that because it's a yes or no vote. It's not a balloted
no,
vote.
it's not the same because they weren't actually asked. If they didn't get a poll, then they weren't actually asked.
Okay.
Which is different than not being in the room. Because if you're not in the room, it's your own fault. But if the poll never even gets sent to this person, it's not their fault that they didn't cast a vote.
Ms. Billiou, it's 426 to 49. This is a de minimis problem.
I'm talking about in the real thing.
In the real thing, there are no elections that are going to be done with yes/no polling.
Mr. Chair, there are several points of order on this topic as well.
Mr. Hayes's point of order is not well taken because it's not a ballot, so it's not a continuing breach. Mr. Perry's point of order that he's brain damaged and not confused is not a point of order. Mr. McVeigh's privileged motion is not privileged. We don't get to adjourn this to Orlando. It's a test tonight.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, why are you reading them if they're not points of order? Why are you reading these things that are not points of order?
For transparency, because then, so Ms. Billiou, I'm doing the best I can. And
I understand that, but you've made
it is not appreciated.
Use it for points of order. And then if you're reading what's not points of order, then it defeats the purpose of only using it for points of order. I'm just pointing that out to see if there's possibly a way to solve this problem. It's not a criticism of you or what you're doing. It's just this process doesn't make sense if we're going to read everything that's in it.
It's instructional though, that we get to see what are and what are not points of order at this point.
Mr. Chairman,
this is the third time. This is the third time we've sat through this, and people still don't know.
And this is the third time that you have been engaging in a running commentary about your problems with the process, and it is not helpful, Ms. Billiou. It does not help.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Dr. Ahmad.
I'd like to say that I think that it is appropriate for you to do what you've been doing because we're trying to mimic a real convention as closely as we can. In a real convention, someone would stand the mic, say, I rise to a point of order. You would ask, what is your point of order? They would say, and if you thought it was not a point of order, you would say, that's not a point of order, so that what they were saying would have been heard. And therefore, this is not any different from a regular convention. Having said that, however, I do have a point of order.
Yes, Dr. Ahmad.
On the right to my point of order. These ballots that are about to be sent out are being sent out to delegates only. I have 5 alternates who are in the room, that is to say online right now, and who should be eligible to vote. In the actual meeting coming up, how are we going to deal with that?
So in the meeting that's coming up, the actual meeting, we will not have people be in the room who are not delegates or serving as delegates. So everyone that's logged into the room will be eligible to vote. But I think there's a limitation tonight as how Mr. Fishman is going to be doing the balloting. Is that correct, Mr. Fishman?
Essentially so. There's a price factor involved, and to send to all the alternates and all the delegates would be a larger cost.
All right. I have a point of order from Mr. Kitson about not being able to communicate our votes, making it difficult to vote. That's not a point of order. That's, if anything, a point of personal privilege. A point of order from Washington Delegate Elliot Jaksch. I'll find you, Mr. Jaksch. Go ahead.
And when you're ready, Mr. Chair, I have a point of parliamentary inquiry.
We're going to get there probably. Go ahead, Mr. Jaksch. Washington Delegate Elliot Jaksch, are you able to speak?
Sorry,
I got a point of order. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, sorry. I think this is actually a point of personal privilege, so I'm sorry about that. But like, what is the procedure if I actually don't get the poll, right? Like during a vote, do I like very quickly in the 30 seconds to vote, type in the question and answer place, like I didn't get the poll, or?
I don't know what the procedure is going to be at that time. I think if you're in communication with your delegation chair and you didn't get the poll, raising it with your delegation chair is probably the simplest way.
So to be clear, within the 30 seconds that we have to do the poll, oh, the 1 minute that we have to
a
do.
minute, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and people suggested 90 seconds.
Okay.
So maybe that will help.
So basically, from my perspective, I would wait like 10 to 20 seconds, immediately raise the thing with my chair, and then at that point, the chair would raise it with the broader group.
Correct. Delaware Delegate Will McVeigh, what ruling of the chair are you asking to appeal, Mr. McVeigh?
I believe according to Robert's rules, it's always in order and a privileged motion to adjourn to a specific place and time.
It is, I'm ruling it out of order right now.
And I'm appealing that ruling.
And I'm ruling that appeal to be dilatory, Mr. McVeigh.
I believe I have a second for that appeal, Mr. Chair.
Maybe you do, but we're still not going to be dealing with it. Sorry, Mr. McVeigh.
What were you asking?
Point of
Point of
order.
information, has the ballots been sent out yet? This
No,
is
Ms.
Mimi from
Rosen, we're
California.
still trying to get through all these points of order that people claim to have. And we're going to do that as long as people keep trying to do it.
Okie dokie, just asking.
No problem. I believe New Jersey alternate Brian Waddell. Go ahead, Mr. Waddell. What is your point of order?
I was just making the point that if you don't read the points of order, then it's like we're not in the room. I think that was made later, so I'll stop now.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Point of order. New Jersey alternate Mark Kappengut raises a point of order about polling through the chairs and within Zoom.
If I can address that, after
ahead.
the ballot, I will send to all the state chairs how their delegation voted so they can see what it will look like when we do it.
Michigan alternate raises a point of privilege of whether or not we were able to get the 25 maximum polls per webinar cap lifted. Mr. Fishman will research that later.
Mr. Fishman, please send to me as well.
Well, yeah, of course.
Point of personal privilege. Mr. Thompson raises a point of personal privilege and asks that when somebody brings up an issue like not getting a poll, it would be helpful if they say what kind of device they're using to try and get through this a little quicker. There's a point of personal privilege from Ohio Delegate Jim Cavoli. He suggests that if the polling window doesn't appear on top, it could be that you're clicking around, look for a poll button near your Q&A. It's probably there. Point of personal privilege raised by Colorado Delegate Betty Ryan. Please stop all this and let us get on with the exercise. Motion to adjourn is not going to be found in order right now. We are not going to have chat. The criticism of the process is not being allowed. Texas Delegate Elizabeth LeBlanc asks why we're not allowing criticism of the process and why I'm referring to it as not helpful, because there's a limited amount of time. There's roughly 540 people and they don't all want to hear the criticisms. If you have direct criticisms of the process, please send them to Mr. Fishman between now and the next meeting. All right, are we prepared to move to the ballots?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fishman. Just explain what you're doing and how you're doing it.
So I will be sending out to delegates only on the ballot for president. We have Gary Johnson, Austin Peterson, Darrell Perry, John McAfee, Mark Feldman. Was it Kevin McCormick? I just heard
Kevin McCormick.
Kevin McCormick, Derek Michael Reed, and Noda. And for vice president, we have Larry Sharpe, William Weld, Alicia Dern, Will Coley, Judd Weiss, Derek Grayson, and Noda. And I am getting ready to put that in the mail.
Mr.
Is there a place
Fishman,
for write-ins?
I did not put in a place for write-ins, but I can do that right now.
and Mr. Fishman, I believe you missed Mr. Supreme.
Yeah, Mr. Supreme was added to the 2016 list.
There are
New York
points of
delegate,
order from. Okay.
There's a point of order about Ron Paul being on there too. I ruled that I did not know if he would take the nomination. And Louisiana delegate Daniel Hayes raises a point of order that he had nominated Larry Sharpe for president.
Would you like me to add Larry Sharpe to the ballot? I will do so.
If he did that, I am gonna assume that that happened.
I did not have that recorded as a motion, Mr. Chair.
If you don't have it recorded, then no, Mr. Sharpe will not be added.
Mr. Chairman, it did happen, but I think we don't know if Larry Sharpe would have accepted the nomination.
Okay, so I know that it happened for VP, but we don't know whether or not Larry would have taken the presidential nomination.
He was already on the list for VP, wasn't he?
Point of information. He's a delegate for New York. You could just ask him.
Oh, that's
If
true.
he's online.
Is he here?
He's here.
Point of order, can we get to the test already?
We're working on it. We're doing our very best.
Mr. Sharpe is unmuted.
Go ahead, Mr. Sharpe. Would you accept the nomination for president in 2016? We've got Mr. Supreme's time machine, apparently. Mr. Sharpe, you should be able to unmute yourself, I think. Larry Sharpe. Not getting anything from Mr. Sharpe. All right, just go ahead and put it in, Mr. Fishman.
Will do.
All right, then now we're going to send out the ballots. Yes?
Yes, one moment to change the ballot to include Larry Sharpe for president.
And for tonight's exercise, we're doing direct email ballots to all of the delegates.
The delegates only. It is not going
The
to.
delegates only.
Delegates only as of the list that we pulled around midnight last night.
Right. So so there are some people who will not get this, but all the delegates that were in as of the list last night at midnight will get this ballot. This is not being done through the delegation chairs, as it will be in the actual thing, because each delegation gets to decide whether they want to use this system or a different one.
People should see an email in their inbox.
Okay. We will hold this vote until, I'm going to say 10:15.
Mr. Chair, there is a point of order from New York delegate Andrew Kolsty.
Yeah, Larry didn't accept him as included, but Ron Paul isn't. It's not really a point of order. That's just the statement of the way that it is. That's where we're at. So you should have in your email box an email from Election Buddy Elections.
Point of
I do
personal
not.
privilege from Texas delegate Joe White. He asks what email address this is coming to so he can whitelist it.
I believe it's invitations@mail.electionbuddy.com.
Do you have yours, Mr. Chair?
I do, actually. Although it's asking me to sign in.
You'll have to sign in with the access.
Oh yeah, with the access key
password
that's in that
sent to
email,
you.
sorry.
South Carolina Delegate Chuck Fields raises a point of order.
My email takes a few minutes, probably not just me. That's why we're keeping this vote open until 10:15. All right. While we are waiting for the vote, we will continue to go through the speaker queue. California Delegate Mark Hinkle.
I'm sorry, there is a point of order. 2 points of order now. I'll let you refer to the queue since there are multiple ones coming in.
Okay. There's a point of order, how long between rounds? I think 15 minutes between rounds sounds reasonable. Point of order about there not being a write-in option for vice president. That may have been an error, in which case it is what it is. There's a point of order. I got the email, but can't get back quickly to where I have my password and ID from Ms. Jenis. I don't know how to solve that. It's more of a point of personal privilege. And then now if I can get California Delegate Mark Hinkle, there we are. Go ahead, Mr. Hinkle.
There's the unmute button. I was wondering if that was going to happen. I have not received the vote. I received all other votes that Fishman sent out, but not this one.
Yeah, it should, I believe it says Libertarian Party 2016 presidential election, third round should be the subject. So that's what you should look for.
Yep, nope, don't have it.
Can you tell me what your email address is, Mr. Hinkle?
mark@garlic.com.
Yep.
All other mail ballot or email ballots you just sent out tonight, I've received, but not this one.
I do show that one is sent to that address, so you may be waiting on arrival.
Maybe and another good reason to have 90 seconds or more to respond.
Yeah, well, that's why this one we're going 15 minutes for the email ones.
The delegate billings, if you look, your access key and the password are in that email.
And by the way, congratulations to everybody who called in. This is stellar.
Alternates are not getting this ballot for the person
Correct.
who asked. And next on deck, we have Illinois Delegate John Phillips. Can find him.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Phillips. 1 second.
That was an error. I took my hand down much earlier, sir. I
Oh,
apologize.
okay. That's okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Harlos.
what time are we going until tonight?
I was going to think that we'll just try and display these results from this round, and then I don't know. I didn't know how many rounds we wanted to try and do.
Chair,
Point of information, we just need to make sure that delegates understand that their delegation chairs are going to be handling this the way that they see fit, and that may or may not include using this ballot, but there are other processes that will be in place, and it will be up to the delegation chairs to decide.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
Georgia Delegate John Panzera.
Mr. Chairman, I have a point of order.
Okay, Dr. Ahmad.
The ballot has Larry Sharpe both in the vice president and president. It makes it unreasonable to vote for both at the same time, since we don't know whether he would still be available for the vice presidential tally in the vice presidential round.
Yep, that's true, but this is just a test. So in the normal system, we would not have both president and vice president on the same email ballot. It would have been
Also,
separate
when my
ballots,
ballot came in,
separate
one of
rounds.
the presidential candidates had been pre-ticked.
Yeah,
I'm
this
not
is,
sure what caused that glitch, but that's definitely should be fixed also.
okay. Georgia Delegate John Panzera. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can disregard. I hit the raise hand button by accident like 45 minutes ago. So.
All right.
Mr. Chair, there is a point of order from California Delegate Tim Ferreira.
Point of order. Will candidates eliminating each round be given time to address the body, and will that be part of the 15 minutes between results being displayed and the next ballot being sent? I believe typically we'll follow the general process that we normally do for candidates being given an opportunity to speak after elimination, which I can't remember if we've codified as a convention rule now or if it's just customary that they get a couple of minutes. Montana Delegate Jacob Kitson. Go ahead, Mr. Kitson. Go ahead, Mr. Kitson. Oh, Mr. Kitson has a microphone problem. That's going to be a problem. We'll need to get that addressed for the next round. There's a call-in number issue Mr. Kitson has. I think there should be a call-in number in the email invitation you got.
There's not a call number for this one. It was an error.
Oh, there's not. Okay, there was an error on this one.
On the other hand, if Mr. Kitson is on a phone, you can log in through Zoom on a phone and use the microphone on there.
Okay. Nevada Delegate.
Point of order from New Jersey alternate Mark Kappengut.
Yeah, that's not so much a point of order. It's a request to allow alternates to try and test voting. That would probably be helpful, but not something we've done for tonight. Nevada Delegate Louis Pombo.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Firstly, Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for your efforts. I would also like to recommend to Mr. Fishman that we primarily maintain a singular screen throughout the convention, likely Ms. Harlos, for the purpose of keeping track of the agenda, active motions, and minutes. I would like to recommend to Ms. Harlos to keep open a browser window on the far right of her monitor to show the Google Doc that Ms. Crawford is maintaining relating to the microphone line. This will limit the questions regarding the speakers list, motions, and the agenda or order of business. I may also recommend that Ms. Harlos keep a secondary program such as Sticky Note or Notepad over the top of her Word program in order to maintain any active motions in a highlighted manner for review of the body. If Ms. Harlos would like to work with me directly for experimentation, I'll be happy to make myself available through Nevada Delegate and State Chair Smith. Thank you, and I yield.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Pombo, I'll get with you after the meeting. There's certain limitations in Zoom with how it shares screens, and what you've suggested right now is not possible, but I brainstormed another option. So if I need some assistance, I appreciate your offer so much, and I will get with you afterwards.
All right. California Delegate Mark Hinkle still is having this point of privilege and not getting the poll for President and VP. It should be an email in your email inbox from Election Buddy. It is not the same as the polling inside of Zoom. California Delegate Kevin Moore. Go ahead, Mr. Moore. Go ahead, Kevin Moore. Go ahead.
I had lowered my hand. No further question at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right, Missouri Delegate Cecil Ince. All right, Missouri Delegate Cecil Ince. Go ahead, Mr. Ince.
I had withdrawn my nomination since nominations were closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ince.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
if I could ask Mr. Pombo to please email secretary@lp.org so I can get in touch with him, please.
Thank you. Texas Delegate Clayton Hunt.
I had also raised my hand in order to make a nomination before the nominations were closed. And so I have lowered my hand.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Louisiana Delegate Daniel Hayes raises a point of privilege. He has not received a ballot. I believe if he was a delegate, he should have received a ballot if he was registered as of the credentialing to whatever email was in the CRM. So I don't know, Mr. Hayes. Double check the email account. Arizona Delegate Alex Flores.
Mr. Hayes' email went to his LP email.
Okay. Arizona Delegate Alex Flores.
Sorry, I didn't have my hand raised.
Nope. Okay. Well, then that's easy. California Delegate Donovan Spencer. Go ahead, Mr. Spencer.
Okay, I just got to unmute. I want to say you already addressed the issue that people are thinking that they're getting a poll thing like they did before, but it's actually going to their email. But you already covered that, so hopefully they get that now.
Hopefully.
But I would like to just raise the point that Bill Weld is not a libertarian. He's not qualified.
He was in 2016.
I don't think so.
Okay. Point noted. Texas alternate Adrian Trevino raises the issue of not getting a ballot, but alternates were not sent ballots for this email. Mr. Hayes raises the issue that he has still not received his email ballot to his lp.org email address. I don't know what that issue is, Mr. Hayes, but I don't know, is it something I can resolve? North Carolina Delegate Chris Cole. North Carolina Delegate Chris Cole.
Hey, just a couple logistic things. Signing in, I know a few people had trouble signing in. I was finally able to sign in through my laptop, but other devices weren't working. Some people said they are getting.
Now let's feel.
So that, and as well as just something I noticed when I was doing the voting polls. I don't know if we're doing polls during the real meeting, but I didn't always remember to hit submit. And I noticed that those who abstained from voting started to decrease. Just making sure that everyone was hitting the submit button instead of just clicking yes or no and then letting it ride out, because I believe that will be an abstained vote.
Okay. It is now 10:16. The balloting should be closed as we were past 10:15. How do you want to display the results, Mr. Fishman?
I'm going to send them as a screenshot to the secretary, and then she can display them.
Okay.
Please do not send to my LP email address.
Understood.
Thank you.
Question.
While we're waiting.
Question, Mr. Chair. Tim McGuire from Indiana. I know we're not doing it tonight, but when next week will we be emailing these results to Ms. Harlos?
Yes. So we will be, each delegation chair will be filling out their tally and sending that into the secretary.
And that'd be just secretary@lp.org.
We'll make sure that there's a good way to transmit. I think one of the ways that Mr. Fishman and I have been talking about is having access to 50 basically ballot Google Sheets that each delegation chair can fill out. And then those can link back up to the secretary and roll up into aggregate results.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Hayes raises a point of order. I'm a duly credentialed delegate and did not receive a ballot. He objects to the results. That objection is noted. All right. Have those results gotten to Ms. Harlos yet?
One moment. I'm getting them. They got embedded, and I have to.
Sorry, I'll send them as attachments next time.
Yeah. So I'm extracting them right now.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to recognize Tennessee Delegate David Sexton. Soon. As soon as I can find him. There he is. David Sexton, go ahead.
Yes, I was made aware about an hour ago that our state chair was not present, and I was trying to get recognized as the vice chair. But in the future, if this were to happen and the real one, how would I be recognized faster? I put in the Q&A to try to make a motion there.
Yeah, so Q&A, and it would be a point of personal privilege because it's an issue of getting you to the right status to be able to serve as delegation chair.
All right, I did try to step in the Q&A. I guess I just got overlooked.
It could have been that. I apologize.
Okay.
Ms. Harlos, how are you doing on the results?
Getting the share up right now. Okay, this is the first image that I was sent.
Okay. I can't see the names, but I'm only seeing a little chunk of the image. Is everyone else seeing the whole
Does that
thing?
help?
It only shows the votes, not the names.
Yeah, so if you could just read them out.
Okay, 1 second here. Mr. Fishman, is there any reason why it says round 2? We didn't do 2 rounds.
Because we originally said we were simulating round 2 of the.
All right, I'll read them out. Gary Johnson, 90.
Would the image not shrink?
It's showing on my screen fine, so I do not understand why it's not showing on your screen fine.
It's not.
It's not though.
I know. You and I are going to have to play with this. We need a test session together.
All right.
So until
go
then,
ahead.
I'll read this out. Gary Johnson, 91 votes, 19.7%. Austin Peterson, 45 votes, 9.7%. Daryl Perry, 18 votes, 3.9%. John McAfee, 20 votes, 4.3%. Mark Feldman, 81 votes, 17.5%. Kevin McCormick, 5 votes, 1.1%. Daryl Michael Reed, 1 vote, 0.2%. Vermin Supreme, 64 votes, 13.9%. Larry Sharpe, 70 votes, 15.2%. Noda, 19 votes, 0.2%. And then we had some write-ins with 1 vote each for Giant Meteor, Dagny Taggart, Nicholas Sarwark, Jill Gavin, Kim Ruff, and then Daggy Taggart, John Mons, Dilatory, Ken Armstrong, and then a different spelling of Dagny Tarrant, Rhett E. Boogie, and
oh dear God.
I'm sorry?
Oh dear God.
Yeah, and then we have another screen here. Thomas Jefferson, Penn Gillette, then Ron Paul got 10 votes, Nick Cheney, Mr. Hornberger, who in the actual fuck does these listings, Justin Amash, and test candidate. And Justin Amash received 3. All the other write-ins received 1, except for the ones I already mentioned. Vice President, Larry Sharpe, 270 votes, 60.1%. William Weld, 32 votes, 7.1%. Alicia Dern, 27 votes, 6.0%. Will Coley, 22 votes, 4.9%. Judd Weiss, 20 votes, 4.5%. Derek Grayson, 5 votes.
Who is not muted on the panel? Because some noise keeps coming in.
It's Pennsylvania.
All right,
Derek-
I took care of that.
Derek Grayson, 5 votes, 1.1%. And Noda, 73 votes, 16.3%. So in the presidential, it says Gary Johnson wins with 19.7% of the vote if we were not doing majority. And Vice President Larry Sharpe wins with 60.1% of the vote.
Okay, so in an actual convention, after we had a round like this, we would eliminate the lowest vote getter and potentially with a suspension eliminate some of the other smaller vote getters, and then we would do another round of voting and continue that just like we would at a normal convention. It would be my intention to have us be done for tonight. We've been doing this for a couple of hours.
I'd like to propose a motion
I'd
to.
like to move to adjourn.
Second.
Well, I was already on the way to doing that, so you don't have to call out that you want to do it. I think we were just going to do it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would just like to say I apologize to Karen and Harlan.
Okay. There's a point of personal privilege from Texas delegate Carol Unsicker. Carol Unsicker, Texas delegate. Why is that not showing up? No, there you are. Go ahead, Carol Unsicker.
Are we going to have another night of practice?
I believe there'll be some practice sessions next week, Mr. Fishman. We just haven't scheduled them yet.
I'll be sending out schedules relatively soon.
Okay.
I would ask the body's indulgence for 12 hours.
And Mr. Fishman, I'd hope we need some amongst like the administrative staff of like the chair, myself and you with some coordination issues, I think.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Mr. Hayes did get his email at 9:22 p.m. North Carolina delegate would like to more explanation of the candidate debate before we adjourn. And at the same time, Indiana delegate Sam Goldstein was going to talk about the debate tokens. So Mr. Goldstein, go ahead. You are recognized to explain how the debate tokens and debate are going to work.
Okay, the debate tokens, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. Debate tokens will go out to registered delegates only sometime, hopefully around noon or so on Tuesday. They will be in fill in the blank. So you fill in the blank, first name and last name for the presidential candidate you want to appear in the debate, and also for vice presidential debate, first name and last name. You will submit those no later than 5 p.m. on Thursday. The vote totals will be then announced, and the top 5 getting at least 10% of the delegate totals for each of those 2 offices will participate in the debate starting at 8:30 p.m. on Thursday evening.
Okay.
Will there be some way for the chairs to transfer the tokens from non-delegates to alternates when the delegates are not able to use them?
No, they're going to only be emailed to the people who are actually registered as delegates with the credentials committee as of noon or 5 p.m. today. That we won't have any way of knowing if people aren't going to be able to access their email.
I didn't mean that. I meant, suppose a delegate gets sick and wants to turn over his place to an alternate.
Yeah, not for debate tokens, Dr. Ahmad.
Yeah, I mean, that might be more appropriate for the actual nomination tokens that are going to be, and just so people know, these are not tokens for the nomination. These are separate tokens this year that we're separating out just for the debates. And the secretary will somehow handle nomination tokens separately later in the week.
Okay. Colorado delegate Betty Rose Ryan raises a point of personal privilege. If we have any problems with how the session went tonight, who do we share them with? Those should be sent to Dan Fishman. Dan, what's your preferred email for that?
xd@lp.org. X is in xylophone.
That's only like 7 characters. That's amazing. All right. That is not, it is not in order to censure the entire LP party. I I see that there's an attempt to be recognized for a motion to adjourn Sendai, Sinadai, or however the hell you pronounce it, from Mr. Perry, but that's what we were going to do. So my intention now would be to allow us to be done. It's 10:28 Eastern time. I appreciate everybody. xd@lp.org. X is in xylophone, D is in Dan, @lp.org to send something to Dan Fishman. All right. I appreciate everyone taking the time. I think we did pretty well. We made it up to a little more than half of the delegate potential capacity, and I appreciate everyone's patience. Have a great evening.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Anyone with secretarial suggestions for things which would make things easier for you on my end, please email me at secretary@lp.org. I'll gratefully receive them.
Good night, everybody.